On March 12, 2026, Benjamin Netanyahu held his first press conference since the war with Iran began. While he was claiming Israel as a global superpower, air raid sirens went off across central Israel. As he was still speaking, Israel's military confirmed it had detected a new barrage of missiles launched from Iran, the sixth salvo of the day. He could not hide from it. 13 days into this war, with more than 6,000 targets struck and over $11 billion spent in the first week alone, Iran is still firing ballistic missiles at Israel. Netanyahu tried to project strength. He talked about crushing the regime and eliminating Iran's leadership. But buried in that press conference was an admission that contradicts everything Israel and America have been saying since the bombs started falling. Once you hear it, the rest of this war looks completely different. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to break down exactly what Netanyahu admitted, why U.S. intelligence directly contradicts his biggest claim, and where this conflict is heading next. Remember what the public was told in the first week. The IDF said it had destroyed 300 Iranian missile launchers. Reports cited a 70% drop in Iranian fire toward Israel. Officials claimed roughly 3/4 of Iran's launch capability had been wiped out. The message from both America and Israel was clear. Overwhelming force, mission nearly accomplished, and Iran on its knees. Now listen to what Netanyahu said 13 days in. He told reporters that Iran had been burying its missile and nuclear capabilities deep underground. He said that if they had not acted when they did, within months those weapons would have become immune to any attack. That word immune is not how a leader describes an enemy he has already beaten. That is a leader explaining why the enemy is still shooting back. He is telling you the campaign has limits and that there are assets the coalition cannot reach. A journalist reporting from Ramallah flagged it in real time, calling it a stark contrast to what officials had been claiming since the opening strikes. On that same day, March 12th, 6 separate ballistic missile salvos came in from Iran. Hezbollah simultaneously launched over 200 rockets from Lebanon at central Israel in what the IDF described as a coordinated joint operation. A missile struck a home in Haniel. A rocket hit a house in Be'ina, injuring civilians. Schools across the entire country remain shut. Israel is still operating under a national state of emergency. 2 weeks into a war that was supposed to be swift and decisive, Netanyahu himself told Fox News on day 4 that this would be a quick and decisive action. It has been neither. The deadliest single event of this conflict landed days earlier in Beit Shemesh, roughly 18 miles from Jerusalem. An Iranian ballistic missile hit a communal shelter inside a synagogue. 9 civilians were killed and dozens more were wounded. 2 Israeli interceptors were fired at that incoming warhead. Both missed. Here's the part that should concern every defense planner. The sirens in the area did not activate in time to give residents the standard 90-second warning window. Iran's ballistic missiles can reach Israel in roughly 10 minutes from launch. The entire civil protection model depends on early detection, timely alerts, and functional intercepts. At Beit Shemesh, all 3 failed simultaneously. That is not a marginal glitch. It is a structural exposure in the very architecture Israel has built its survival doctrine around. When the interceptors miss and the sirens lag, the shelter is not protection. It is a trap. What Netanyahu said next about regime change contradicts what American intelligence has been telling the White House for weeks. That gap is the most dangerous fault line in this entire war right now. Netanyahu told reporters that one of his core objectives is to create the conditions for the Iranian people to expel their brutal regime. Then, a journalist asked him directly whether he could guarantee that outcome. He admitted that he cannot promise 100% that the regime will fall without the Iranian people themselves rising up. He told Iranians, "Help is on the way, but at the end of the day, it is up to you." This is an admission from a wartime leader that the military operation by itself cannot deliver the stated political goal. The U.S. called this operation Epic Fury, while Israel called it Operation Roaring Lion. The opening salvo on February 28th killed Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei in a targeted strike on a compound in Tehran. Despite billions spent and thousands of sorties flown, the man directing the strikes says the outcome still depends on Iranian civilians taking to the streets. This holds against what U.S. intelligence has assessed. A classified report by the National Intelligence Council concluded that neither limited airstrikes nor a prolonged military campaign would be likely to result in regime change in Iran. That assessment was written in February 2026. The National Intelligence Council represents the consensus view of all major American intelligence agencies. Multiple follow-up reports have reached the same conclusion, with findings that the regime is not in danger and retains control of the Iranian public. Even a senior Israeli official privately acknowledged to Reuters that there is no certainty the war will lead to the collapse of the clerical government. Furthermore, Iran did not descend into chaos after Khamenei was killed. The Assembly of Experts convened within days and selected Mojtaba Khamenei, the late leader's son, as the new supreme leader. He is described by analysts as more hardline than his father. His first statement was read aloud on Iranian state television. Though he did not appear on camera, his message was defiant. He vowed to avenge Iranian blood and declared that the Strait of Hormuz would remain a tool of pressure against the West. When a journalist asked Netanyahu what fate awaited Mojtaba and Hezbollah leader Naim Qassem, his answer was a public assassination threat delivered casually, stating he would not write either man a life insurance policy. 13 days into the most expensive military campaign since the 2003 invasion of Iraq, the leaders whose removal was the objective remain alive, and the command structure is functioning. Netanyahu was also confronted with a 2024 claim that military strikes had set Hezbollah back 20 years. When asked how Hezbollah is currently firing 200 rockets a day, he reframed the issue, arguing that original threat projections were even more catastrophic. However, he admitted on the record that Hezbollah continues to be capable of attacking Israel. On March 12th, the IDF carried out strikes in central Beirut and pushed further into southern Lebanon. Senior Israeli defense officials warned privately that Hezbollah still holds a large inventory of launchers and intends to grind the IDF down over time. Economically, the situation is dire. The Strait of Hormuz has been effectively closed for nearly 2 weeks. The IRGC declared that no oil would pass through, and since February 28th, at least 16 attacks on commercial ships have been documented. Brent crude shot from approximately $73 per barrel to over $130 within the first 10 days. The International Energy Agency announced a release of 400 million barrels from emergency reserves, the largest coordinated drawdown in its history. The Pentagon confirmed that the first 6 days of operations alone cost over $3 billion. Iran has also struck Gulf states indiscriminately, hitting liquefied natural gas facilities in Qatar and U.S. installations in Kuwait and Iraq. At least 7 American service members have been killed. Inside Iran, the civilian toll is growing, with human rights organizations reporting over 2,400 dead and dozens of hospitals damaged. Through all of this, the political payoff Netanyahu expected has not arrived. Polls show him losing seats in projected election outcomes. His corruption trial continues, and his pardon request was found not to meet legal criteria. While Donald Trump publicly criticized Israeli President Isaac Herzog for not issuing the pardon, he has also stated he wants the war finished soon. Netanyahu needs the conflict to extend to avoid the courtroom, while Trump wants it to end. Their strategic clocks are running in opposite directions. 13 days in, the Iranian government is still standing, the missiles are still flying, and no one has been able to define what a realistic ending actually looks like. Join the discussion in the comments below. Who do you think is winning the war, and do you think it is getting out of hand? Subscribe and like the video to stay updated.